Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your 2022 write-in Oakland mayoral candidate. Well, last night was another episode, the third week in the amazing race. And this time they went to Italy, Bologna, Italy. And so what was so interesting is that this generation of youngsters that are in the amazing race don't know how to drive a stick, and it was so funny because they kept stalling the cars. Then they're trying to figure out, how do I find what gear? Well, I didn't see any of the youngsters figure out, look at the top of the shifter, because the shift pattern is being covered by their hand that was sitting on top of that shifter. And so if they simply just looked at the top without their hand on there, they would have seen the pattern for the transmission. But it just amazed me that we have a generation of young folks that grew up, obviously, with only an automatic transmission vehicle. And so a lot can be said. Because even my mother, who was born in 1922, she knew how to drive a stick shift. And the reason why I say that is because those of you that remember me having 1981 Datsun 280ZX sports car, my mom loved driving that car, and it was a stick, a 5-speed, and so she drove that car without any problems. And my dad, he knew how to drive a stick, and so the only person that I am sure that in our family that did not know how to drive a stick was my sister, and that's because she was simply not into sports vehicles, and my dad had her in a great big land yacht, which was a Chevrolet Impala. It's like it was a 75, so it was one of the longest, biggest cars of the period, and that thing was huge. And so that's what my sister tended to drive, and they were all automatics. And then when she went off to college, she had an automatic vehicle there, and all her life she drove an automatic. So that's why I say I'm really certain that if it came to whether she knew how to drive a stick or not, I seriously doubt that she would do much better than a lot of these youngsters did in the amazing race once they got into Italy. And so anyway, bringing you up to speed, one of the most interesting things about amazing race is that they always do something special about the country. And so there were two things in Italy, for Bologna, Italy. One was the special cheese that they have, and there was a task where they had to bring an 88-pound block of cheese to a cutter, and then from the cutter deliver it to 2 restaurants. And so they did that. And then for those of you that are motorcycle enthusiasts, they went to the Ducati racing team at the Ducati factory in Italy. And so this episode was really interesting because you got to see the contestants, the amazing race contestants, actually assembling parts of the racing motorcycle, the Pagliani motorcycle. It's one of the fastest racing motorcycles on the circuit. And so anyway, they had to put front wheels on and a few other things, and then they had to piece together and put on the aerodynamic fairings pieces. So it was real interesting. Those of you like myself that had a motorcycle and worked on their own motorcycles, you'll find this really interesting, because there were some people that did it extremely well, and there were couples that didn't do so well at all. So I'm rooting for a couple of teams here. One of the teams is Glenda and Lumumba, and they're an interesting couple. She is over 6 feet tall, and the husband, Lumumba, is 5'7". So it was pretty close to my ex-wife and I, because my ex-wife, she was a model, and she was 6'1", and at one time I was 5'10", and with aging and things that happen with your bone structure, I'm down to 5'8". So anyway, at 5'10", it wasn't so bad, but as I was starting to lose height, or my ex-wife wore heels, it just reminded me of that couple, and so that's why I'm rooting for them, because they mirrored us. And then another couple, which is interesting because there are several mixed race couples in this one, and this one is an Asian husband and a Caucasian female, which was like myself and my ex-wife, and so I'm rooting for them. And then there was another couple, which was really interesting, because they're married as an Asian man, and he's married to a black female, and this is Rich and Dom, and so I'm rooting for them too. I really like them. They're a really interesting couple. They're motivational speakers, and so it's interesting to see what they do when they're stressed out on different things and how they motivate each other. So keep an eye on that couple. They're a real interesting couple. Like I said, Rich is Asian, and Dominique, or Dom, is African American, and they're a married couple. So they're going to be fun to watch. And then Glenda, like I said, Glenda, Lumumba, they just mirrored my ex and I in terms of height relationships. But there are a lot of other couples involved, but those are kind of the couples that I'm keeping tabs on. So who are you keeping tabs on if you're following The Amazing Race? I'm going to do this as a weekly journal as we move along and progress and see who actually makes it to the end. But I'm thinking Glenda, Lumumba. Well, this episode, they really had some major errors, and so I'm thinking this week's episode has a continuation in the next week, and so I'm thinking quite possibly because they're last or next to last right now, and they started out this leg of in Italy, or going to Italy, in first place. And then it just goes to show how mistakes can really throw things off. So anyway, thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.